Hi, and welcome back to our Google training series. In this video, we're going to demo and learn about some of the creativity tools in Google that are a little bit lesser known. So G Suite has quite a few creativity tools with slides and docs and sheets and forms, but there are some that are within the G Suite group that are awesome for projects and for students to do a little bit more creative application of their understanding that maybe you don't always see in presentations and the like. So the creativity tools in Google that we're going to be focusing on today, there are 5 of them: drawings, earth, arts and culture, maps, and tour creator. So these are some lesser known ones, but ones that are still exciting and fun to use nonetheless. So the tools we're going to be using are ideally going to help you further universal design for learning in your classroom, so to provide students options for engagement and action and expression. But all of the tools we'll be focusing on also are great if you want to use them as a teaching resource for your students, so as an option for representation as well. So we're going to plan to use these tools in upcoming lessons too. All right, the why. So there are lots of UDL connections behind the tools that we're going to be using today. I'm not going to go through every single checkpoint, but they're kind of highlighted here. So options for engagement, perception, comprehension, and then expression and communication. In terms of other areas where these tools are helpful, these resources are also great for supporting culturally responsive teaching in your classroom and cultural responsiveness. So some of the tools I'm going to show you with Earth and Maps and Tour Creator and Arts and Culture really allow students to get into different places around the world, to look at different ethnic groups and cultures, and to have a window into that lived experience. Furthermore, these tools are also great because they allow students to see maybe their own background reflected in the curriculum, maybe where they haven't seen it before. So it's a great window for students too. And lastly, it's kind of a step towards that final goal in cultural responsive teaching, which is stepping into another culture. So this is another option for kind of building in some of those steps towards cultural responsive teaching. And these terms are all from an article from Teaching Tolerance, and it's great to check out. I haven't linked here on my slide if you want to see more information on that, but it's a great resource for trying to build in these opportunities for students. And if students see themselves in the curriculum and they identify with that, they're much more likely to be engaged because they have a little bit of more of a stake in the game. And it's exciting for them to see things that are relevant to them as well. So the first tool that we're going to focus on today is Google Drawings. And the way the format of this activity is going to go is I'll show you an example of this tool, the way it was used in a lesson. I'll walk you through how to use the tool and then give you lesson ideas as well. So Google Drawings, the example here, Google Drawings is a digital graphic design graphing tool within G Suite. So like other G Suite resources, it saves automatically in your Google Drive. You can share with others so they can collaborate on it. Multiple people can be working on it at one time, or you can publish it and then it's only view only. So that's kind of the beauty behind this, is that it's also a great tool for building in some teamwork and collaboration with students. And then Google Drawings is also flexible like other Google resources and tools, and that you can add lots of different multimedia to a Google Drawing too. So you can put in pictures, audio recordings, videos, word art, lots of different things here, and you can even resize it and change the dimensions depending on what you want to do. So the example I'm showing you here is from an elementary class. I found this one online. I did not make this myself. This is a student-created project over endangered animals. And as you can see here, there's lots of different content. There are text boxes here. There are some pictures the students added, but there's also audio recordings the student created and uploaded. And there's videos from YouTube. So it's a little bit more dynamic than just a plain poster paper presentation. There's a few more options on there for students to engage and interact with this specific project. And it's, again, supportive of students who might need those options for perception because they can listen to the information or they can see it with a video. So that is an example of a Google Drawing used as an interactive digital poster. But there are lots of other ways you can use Google Drawings as well. You can use it to create graphic organizers and notes. You can use it to kind of plan out a project. So it's kind of a good project management tool. You can use it for newsletters as well, or even digital notes and note taking. So if your students are really liking to use visual notes as a way of organizing what they've learned in a unit or in a lesson, this could be a way of doing that. So it's kind of like a virtual sketchnoting tool if you want to provide that option to your students. So on the next few slides, I'm going to show you some examples of how teachers have used Google Drawings, and then I'll show you how to make one yourself. So here's an example from Matt Miller of Ditch That Textbook. And this is a visual note-taking example for Google Drawings. So what this example shows is how you can put pictures in text boxes to kind of summarize a unit and make a much more dynamic visual note-taking. They added some word art pieces here, and those were all done through Google Drawings. Another example here is you can use Google Drawings to make graphic organizers too. So if you like to have students concept map, organize their information in this way before they write an essay or to compare and contrast different things you've been studying, this is a way of doing that on a digital device, which sometimes those can be kind of tricky to hunt down and find. And you don't have to create them from scratch either. There are lots of Google Drawing graphic organizer templates out there. I've linked several examples. This first one is a whole library of them that others have so graciously shared on social media and Twitter and on blogs, and they're all combined here. And what you need to do is if you want to use this resource, you can just make a copy of this folder, or you can go through and look at specific ones and make copies of these specific diagrams if those are ones that you would like to use. So those are all templates for graphic organizers. The other one here is one that I had actually made for teachers in BCSC for argumentative writing, but there's some other ones on here as well. And these are some different templates that you can have editing access to, make copies of them, and there's even more templates listed here. So some additional options there. And there's a complete guide that goes through that. The other example that I wanted to show you is interactive posters. So kind of another example of the first one I showed you. You can use Google Drawings for students to create graphics and online posters and make them more dynamic by adding different elements and pieces to them other than just pictures and text. And you can even make interactive worksheets and graphs on Google Drawings too. So in this specific example, I'm going to click it so I can show you. This teacher used an animated picture known as a GIF or a GIF. There's a lot of contention out there on how you pronounce that. I say GIF myself, but that's just me. So this is an example of one this teacher found an animated GIF online, put it on here, and now it's a much more visually pleasing, exciting diagram to look at. And what the students would do is they would have editing access to this, but they would drag and drop those terms over to where they go on this graph. So if you like to use charts and graphs quite a bit in your class and diagrams, this is a way of providing students a digital option to do that, and one that's animated too, so they can see those different parts going. And this teacher just Googled animated GIF heart, and this is what came up. So you can search those for your subject area. Depending on what you teach, it might be a little bit easier or harder to find, but there are some out there that you can use, and all the teacher did was just insert that as a picture in this file. So that is kind of the gist on examples and ways you can use Google Drawings in the classroom. Now I'm going to show you how you can make one yourself. So there are, again, lots of resources and tutorials here. I'm going to show you how you can make one. And if at any point in time you want to stop and pause before I continue on in this presentation, you have complete control to do that. That's kind of the beauty of a virtual presentation that you're going through at your own pace, is that you have control on the pace. You can skip ahead or you can pause and go with me. So to start in Google Drawings, first thing to do is you can either just type in Google Drawings on your top banner. I do have it linked here in a couple different places, but if I open a new tab and I go to my apps, you go to Google Drive, and then it is not one of the most well-known tools on Google, partly because it's not in this first new menu. But if I go to New, More, and then Google Drawings, it is there. And it will open up a blank drawing. All drawings are automatically saved in your Google Drive, so you don't have to worry about clicking the Save button. You can share them, same sharing options as before, with someone directly or through a link. And to get going on a Google drawing, it's really helpful if you give it a name first. Saved it. Tells you, and this is where you can organize it into folders after you've named it. All right, so similar to slides, if you have been kind of dabbling in G Suite tools and have started to use slides, there's a lot of the same functions in drawings as there are in slides. It's just one specific screen instead of adding multiple. So if I wanted to change the dimensions of my drawing, I could go to File, Page Setup, and by default, this is what it's set as, but if I want it to be set as the same size as a piece of paper, so maybe my students are doing a digital poster, this is where I can change that. So whenever we go to print this, it prints a little bit easier. You can always download a Google Drawing as a PDF too, if that's how you would like to print it as well. Or you can save it as a picture file. So it always gives it a transparent background. I know it looks checkered right now, but it's a PNG file, so it's transparent background whenever you save this. So to add content to this, I go to the insert and I have quite a few options here. I can add a picture from my computer. I can search from the web. I'm going to add a picture here. I'm going to move my video so you can see what I'm doing. All right. So I can add my picture there, resize it, do whatever I'd like, and that was just from a Google search. I could also add one from Drive, Photos, or I could take a picture right here and now if I wanted to. Next thing I could do is add a text box. All right, so I can add my text box, resize it, I can change my font, same things as I could in any other. Did not mean to rearrange that. I wanted to. All right, other features I can add shapes. This is great for that graphic organizer piece. If you want to add call out boxes, there's speech bubbles. Students can even make their own little cartoons in this too. I can change that, maybe where it's transparent. Add more shapes if I want to. Put them wherever I need to. Other media I can add a table if I needed to, a chart. So this integrates with Google Sheets. So if I have a diagram that came from a survey or a form, I could add that here. There's also diagrams already made for you. So if you want to use a graphic organizer that's already made within G Suite, I can do that here. I can add cycles, relationships, timelines, hierarchy. You have some flexibility there. You can even change the color scheme. You can add word art too, and this is kind of fun. So it's a little bit different than just traditional word art that you see in like Microsoft Word, and that you don't get to edit it the first time you type it in. So you'll type your word. So I add it here, and by default, it always looks like this. But if I want to change the way this looks, change my font, my background. I can change my font style. If I need to, I can resize it and move it around there. So that's kind of how you can make it look a little bit more like a poster. And now if I want to add videos and links to other things, this is kind of where it's a little bit more creative and fun. So I don't actually get the option to insert a video or audio recording here. If I wanted to add a video, what I would do is add a link to the video. So I would click the link button, go over to YouTube. Copy this one.
Education has changed.
Go back to our drawing, paste it, and there it is. So now if someone clicks this, they see the link. And I can do the same thing for this picture if I want it to be that way. So that is kind of how you can add some different visuals and graphics and things there. There's shapes and lines you can put. I can format things to change the background color if I wanted to as well. And I can even arrange things so that they're in different layers, almost like in Photoshop if you've messed with that. Whenever I am finished with using my Google Drawing, also know that there's the same tools here as you see in Google Slides, where I can use a dictionary, explore, I can do a lot of research right here within this one tool. Whenever I'm finished, I can share it with someone else. I can make a copy, make a new drawing, or if I want to download this as a PDF or as a picture so I can put it somewhere else, I have the opportunity to do that here. And just, it always saves in your Google Drive. So if you ever wonder where it goes, you can search there and find it. So that is how you use Google Drawings. Now, if you're following along with me, this would be a good time for you to kind of practice and play and see what's there. There are some examples listed here, and I tried to put examples for a lot of different subject areas because I know sometimes it might be easy to see how a tool connects to maybe a science class, but maybe it's not as obvious for an English class or a math class. So I tried to put some different examples here. These first few are just templates mainly for writing activities. This one is a walkthrough in 4 minutes. This is a walkthrough for students. And this last one here is how you can use Google Drawings in a math.
Simply right-click on your canvas, go to.
This is from a trainer, a Google certified trainer who was a math teacher. So he has some really great ideas, and he taught across lots of different grade levels. So it's elementary, middle school, and high school examples that he puts in there. And what he did is he made drag and drop activities for elementary students that had math problems, and the students would drag and drop the equation symbols in there or the correct answers. And for the high school ones, he would put charts on there and have students make graphs and charts within here too. So that is an example there. So here's an example of how we use different shapes to have students do that in a math class. All right, the next tool, you've pressed pause and you're back to joining me, is Google My Maps. So My Maps is one of those hidden gems in G Suite. And it sounds like it's really only for social studies teachers, but it's not. You could use this in so many different subject areas, and I've seen it used in virtually every single one. And that's why I love this tool, is that it's really flexible and your limits are really just your creativity on this one. So to show you what a Google My Maps is, I first want to tell you what the tool is. It is an interactive, collaborative, shareable map. So it is your own map. It's not one that's published out there for everyone to see and use unless you want it to be that way. Students can all be working on it at the same time. You can add in different points of interest to it. So you add little pinpoints and markers, and within that pinpoint and marker, you can add slides, pictures, text, videos, additional resources, virtual tours if you wanted to. You can make it very dynamic. So those different points on the map can tell a story or teach you about something, or it can be a culminating project for a research unit where students are researching different places in the world, or data trends, or the points on a map can represent statistics of maybe where people are healthier, where they're sick, or education attainment level. So you can really connect this to lots of different areas. It's not just one for social studies. So on this slide, I have a link to My Maps. That's a really quick way to get to it. If you search on Google My Maps, it will come up there. There is a guide sheet here that walks you through everything I'm going to show you step by step, and how you can use Google Maps in fun different ways. So you can technically import anything from a spreadsheet into a My Map, and it will put those locations in the map if that's one of the columns in your spreadsheet. So that's kind of a quick way to do that. Connections there is maybe if you're a stats teacher and your students are studying different locations and you want to see it in a more visual way, your students could organize it in a sheet, put their data there, and then upload it. That would also work if you're a health teacher and you're looking at different health data from around the world, put it there. If you're a social studies teacher, you can do that too. Maybe if you're a PE teacher and you're looking at sports, again, other ways to easily upload that information. Then there's ideas from My Maps there. So the first one I'm going to show you some examples of My Maps before I go into building and adding different content to them. And there are lots of examples on here for different subject areas, so you can see some of the different ways that it can be used. All right, so the first map I'm going to show you is one that I had used when I was a social studies teacher. And I use this as a unit launcher. So this was before my students had studied this area of the world. So that's one way you can use this, as a way to kickstart a unit, to take students there and introduce them to this area. The other way that you could use it is this could be a project for students. They have the ability to create their own mind maps and add their own understanding. This could be a way for them to do that. So you have some choice there in how you can do this. And what's great with mind maps is that it kind of brings in some of that spatial awareness and geography knowledge that a lot of our students have been lacking. We, as the United States, has pretty low geography awareness scores compared to other countries. So this is a way to kind of build in some of that and connect it to different areas and subjects too. So here we are. These are the different options of adding different points and markers. So if I click on any one of these points, see here, I've organized them. It works in layers. So this first layer here of all the blue points is the country's names, capital cities, major cities, deserts, land areas, bodies of water, and rivers. So if I click one of these locations, we'll see a little bit about that place. This is a city. So there's pictures of it, a video. If I click country, there's even more. One where I know. All right. So there's a map. I added all these pictures. There's a video there as well. So you can add lots of different content to these too, text, whatever have you. And you can even add your own pictures if you wanted. So to add points to a mind map, what you do is you search across the top here. So if I search for location, that is the fastest way you can add a little pinpoint to a mind map. It's just to search for the location and Google will take you there automatically, or you can just drag and drop it yourself wherever you want. But I like to do this so it's a little bit more accurate. And it pulls data from Google's database here. So if I'm ready for this to be part of my map, I'll add it to my map. And it added it here to this layer, but if I wanted to rearrange it somewhere else, I could just drag and drop it into capital cities if I wanted to, but I'm going to keep it here. All right, so if I want to change the color, I can change the style of the icon. If I needed to, I'm just going to keep it at that one, but if I want to change the color, it's where I have the option to do that. Now to add in other information, this is where I can make it a little bit more dynamic and fun. So I can type my own information here. It automatically puts some links in there from Google. If I don't think that's what I want my students to see, I can always remove it. And save. Now, if you're thinking, I don't see any pictures and things there, if I click my picture icon, this is where I have the opportunity to add more media. Upload from my drive or my camera. I can search the internet if I want to. If I don't have pictures of Egypt on my device, I can do more in Google image search and add some of those pictures there. And if I want to add more, like the example I showed you, click the plus button. And let's say I want to add a video. So I could do YouTube search. I like to add, and when I'm a social studies teacher, so I like to use this as a unit launcher. I like to add little drone videos so my students could pretend like they were on a virtual tour when they clicked here. I always put short videos so it wasn't tons of info my students would see, just a really short one. And I can add more pictures and things there. I can add pictures from my drive. I can delete it if I want to, and I'll click save. So now when my students come over and they click on this point that I added, I could have typed out instructions for them if I wanted to, but there are pictures that come up now and they see my description right there. So that is how you can use Google My Maps to add some points and things there. Other features in My Maps include adding markers this way. You can draw lines between places. So I can draw shapes if I wanted to connect these two. I can draw it around a whole area if I want. So maybe this is signifying an area of focus for my students. add pictures again if I needed to. And I can even change the color of that as well so that it stands out to my students. I can make it transparent or not transparent. So ways that I've seen teachers use this is if they're a math teacher, they put different shapes around the world. They outline shapes in nature, and the students go through and look at them and find them. I've seen this before used in business classes as well. So you have some different options there, and you can always delete that piece if you need to. And it's all saving automatically. Whenever I am finished playing around with this tool, I can preview it here. I can add another layer if I want to, and that will organize all those pinpoints together. But I can share it, and that's how others can see my map and use it. So I'll click share, and you can share it directly with someone so they can edit or view it. Or if I go to get link, I can copy my link and share it that way and publish it to the web so others can see it so that my map is ready for my students to use. So that is how you build in My Maps. And again, if you need a little bit more of a walkthrough on that, it's there. Other examples that I'll show you. So that was the first one. Here's a science class example. This was earthquakes in the US since the year 2000. And there's all kinds of them there. Has pinpoints and data on there. Since I didn't make this map, I get this view, which kind of organizes it a little bit more clean. There is a global issues one here. This is great for an interdisciplinary unit. Click, I can get more information on those points, and this teacher put links as a part of the description on that point, which is kind of cool. Other examples here, a lit trip, so walking through the different areas where the author had visited when writing a novel. In the math class example here, this is kind of a fun one. This teacher made a global math challenge for his students. So he put different pinpoints and he changed the logos here to go to different places. But whenever the students click on a pinpoint, he put math problems there for students to do. So it applies their different skill sets that they've learned. So this is for a geography class in particular, not geography, geometry class in particular. So he had students create different polygons and shapes, and they had to complete some math problems there. And then they had to add their assignment on its learning and turn it back to him. So this is an example of a way you can build in those different areas. And if you want to make it a little bit more complicated, he could have added different places around the world, and the students had to zoom out and find those locations. So it could have been almost like a math scavenger hunt. So it's a way of making some of your worksheets and work time activities a little bit more dynamic by adding in pictures and videos and connecting that to a different subject area. So that is how you can use Google My Maps in your classroom. So other ideas are listed on here, using this for a map-based timeline or to tell a story, to compare it to a novel and where they go, the characters go in the story, turning stats into a visual aid, showing where students have lived. So your students, this is something you use at the end of the year, where students have lived across the world, or maybe where their families are from, or maybe where they'd like to travel to, or if they went somewhere over the summer, you can use it that way. This is great if maybe you're an athletic director too, or you organize field trips to show parents where you're going on your field trip or where competitions and games will be. Just a really helpful visual aid. We use this in our district to also show families and students where there's free Wi-Fi access. So it's a super dynamic tool. Businesses use it. It's a fun one, and you can use it with your students to create or to show them information. The next one I'm going to show you is Google Earth. Now, you might think this isn't a new tool. Google Earth has been around for a while, and yes, it has. I remember using this as a way to kind of explore and play around on the computer back when it first got started. It's gotten a lot more dynamic though. Google Earth used to just be a consumption tool. So you would just go on there, consume information, read, very passive tool. You couldn't really create within it. That is the thing that has changed. You can now build presentations and projects within Google Earth through a new feature that is aptly called My Projects in Google Earth. So I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like. And I will warn you, it usually does take a second to load. Your students have access to this. All teachers do. And Google Earth is another one that you can use in a lot of different subject areas in grade levels. So while this is loading, I'm going to close out some of my tabs. All right, so we are in a sample project within Google Earth. So projects in Google Earth essentially allow you to put different pinpoints and markers, go a little bit similar to my maps, around the world, and you can tell a story with those, add different content, and get really up close and personal views to them, which is a little bit different than my maps in that you are very close to actually being in this place when you look at Google Earth. So this is great if you are a science teacher and you're studying different locations in the world, volcanoes, oceans, bodies of water, different rocks and sediments. If you're a social studies teacher and you want to take people and your students to different places that they're studying, places of the past, museums, monuments, historic locations. If you're a foreign language teacher and you want to show students where people are speaking the different languages that you're studying, another place to do that, and to take them to famous cities in those countries. If you're an English language arts teacher and you want to show your students where the main characters are in the novel or to tell a story in that way, or if they're doing some creative writing, they can tell a story in this platform. If you're a health teacher, again, if you're looking at different health and you're comparing data from different countries, this is the way of doing that. Math teacher, the example where I showed you earlier, where you can embed different math problems, you can do that here with the different markers on Google Earth. So there are lots of ideas for using this. Again, it's just limited by your creativity. And there's a whole list of examples of how you can use this linked on my slide deck. So if I am building in Google Earth, it will first take me to this screen. And this little sidebar here is where all of my different options are. So in Google Earth, I can just search and look up locations. I'm not building anything. I'm just learning about them here. Voyager brings up some kind of helpful getting started resources. So if you want to see how people have used Google Earth before and made lessons that you kind of borrow and implement already, this is a way of doing that. There are lots of examples here. Some of them are really created and designed by teachers, so you can use those. And it takes you to those different places and you can start exploring and seeing them. So there's different markers there. And I'm showing you an example of what this looks like if you've made a project on Google Earth. This is what it looks like. It takes you to that place, zooms you in, zooms you out, gives you a picture and a description here. And then because I am on a street view right now, which is a satellite image that Google has taken, and it's very up close and personal, I can even walk around this area. If I see the little arrows on my screen, I can walk around this place almost like I am there. I can pan around and look. So that's kind of a cool example. All right, and I can zoom back out if I need to. So that's the Voyager one. You can borrow ideas. The I'm Feeling Lucky rolls the dice and takes you to a random place around the world. And it looks like we are going to Vietnam. So it takes you there. You can get up close and personal if I want. If I hide this little description, and take this little yellow guy here. And whenever I see a little blue dot on my screen, that means someone has taken a picture there. So I can get closer. So if I drag my little Google man there, he takes me. And this is where, again, I have the option to walk around this location and look around. If I wanted to look out of this view, I exit Street View, and then it takes me back. If I want to see my description again, I click this. I want to get even more close, I click this button again, it shows me this location. Now, this next one is the creative part of Google Earth, where you can build projects and create and do things, and your students have the same opportunities to do that too. So the projects feature in Google Earth allows you to create, and it automatically saves in Google Drive. These are sample ones that I've made. If I want to start from scratch, I'll just click New Project and then create a project in Google Drive. All right, so I'll give it a name. So I'm not traveling anywhere this summer like most of us are not. So I'll just make this a want to be summer tour. My description, my information there. If you want to save this or not save, it saves automatically. If I want to share this with someone else, I can share it here. Share directly with someone. So it's Google based. So you can collaborate with someone, give a shareable link, share directly so they can edit. So it is a collaborative project if you want. I can also delete it if I need to there, edit again. But to get started on this, it does have a tutorial here that's really helpful if you want to get a little bit more in-depth information. But to get started on my map and to add different points of interest to this, I'll click New Feature. And I always do search to add place because to me that is helpful because I don't like to have to click and drag and zoom out and find the location myself. So let's say that my sample location is in Italy. So I would search my location and Google will try to take me there. And it automatically brings up a picture here, a description pulled off of Google Maps and Google Description. So if I'm really happy with this information, this is something that I like that's a little bit different than my maps, is that Google gives me some of this information already. I don't have to be adding pictures and content myself unless I want to. So if I really like this view, I can get a little bit closer if I click this little button here. This is the view. If I want to add this to my project, if I like the way this looks, I'll just click Add to Project. I can give it a different name. Add it to this project. I can add it somewhere else if I want to, and I'll click Save. And then over here, you see on my project, it is added Sorrento, this location here, onto my tour. So if I want to change the way this looks, if I don't want this picture, if I want something different, I can click Edit this feature. And I can change the way this marker looks. If I want it to be a different color, I can. I can also change the information that shows up. So it does tell me this information is provided by Google, but if I want to add my own pictures, my own content, if I click Replace, I can do that. And I have the ability to kind of personalize it there if I want to. So that is how I add a point. If I want to add another feature, I can. All right, so I add another point there. I can do add to project again. The way that looks. I'll click Save. And now I have my two different spots there on my vacation. And I would just keep repeating that process and adding more. If I wanted to add a line or shape, I could do that too. I can draw it on my screen. I add a full screen slide that just basically makes this like a slideshow. So what I could do is maybe use this as an introduction to my next location. So if I spell things correctly. And for my background, I can find a Google image. I can even capture what's on the map behind me right now. But I'm going to go with these. And change kind of the way the text looks. Green. All right, and it's set there. We're all good to go. And that point has now been added in my presentation. It's not a point, it's just a slide. So if I want to preview this, I can preview it there, but otherwise I'm going to go back. I see that there. So my next new feature I'm going to add is city in Spain. Add to project. All right, save it. So let's say that I'm finished adding points here to my project and I'm happy with the way that looks. Whenever I am finished, I can again add it and share it with someone else. But if I want to see what this looks like to someone who doesn't have editing access and it's in present mode for them, I'll click present. And now I can kind of walk through. It basically walks you through a slideshow of your points on Google Earth. So again, it's a really great project tool. It's great for introducing new concepts to your students. And over here, it's kind of like your master slide deck where you have your different slides. This is my table of contents here. So I can scroll through these different places and travel the world. And what's cool though is that if I want to get a more up close and personal view, even if I'm just viewing this as a viewer, not someone who's made this, I can zoom in if I want. I can drop my little guy here if I need to. And it really brings me up close and personal to these places. And if I had added additional content and information here, I could see that. So it's pretty cool in that you can really get a feel for walking around this place and seeing it for yourself just from this. So if I click the next one, it will show you that screen for Spain, that little slide that we added. And then it takes me to my next location. It's a cool way of presenting information in a very geographic, spatial, fun way. And that is how you use Google Earth. So there are some examples that I have linked on here. There's an example here that is from outer space. The student really zoomed out of Google Earth and did one on the solar system that was made by a student. There's a step-by-step guide here and ideas listed as well. So a lot of the same ideas for lessons that I showed you with my maps, you could also use in Google Earth. Next tool I'm going to show you is kind of building on what we just saw with Google Earth, and that is building virtual tours in another Google tool called Google Tour Creator. So here is a sample tour to kind of get your feet wet. And this is a tool that is not in the G Suite family. It is in a separate, newer family of Google, and that is Poly, where developers and coders are coming up with new tools for Google, pitching them here, and if they get accepted, then they're accessible in this way. So Poly is where you can find this, but if you just search Google Tour Creator, it comes up. Students and staff all have access to this. And here's an example of what this looks like. So this is in presenter mode, not in editing mode. And what Tour Creator allows you to do is to travel to different places around the world. And this one, I have not been to this place. That's the great thing about Tour Creator is there are templates that are already there. So you don't have to go to these places to make these tours. There are panoramic pictures that you can pull from Google Street View to make this. Google Street View is what we used in Google Earth and My Maps when we were walking around those different places. People publish those, Google puts them out there. You can use those if you want. And you can also add your own pictures and descriptions to this. So you can really personalize this and make this a very specific virtual tour for what your students in your class need. And you can even borrow from a template so you don't have to start from scratch, or you can start from scratch if you want. So I made this tour. There are some things to note here. As you see, this is a panoramic picture, so I can look around, I can see different things. Kind of exciting there. And if I click one of these points, this person who made this added points of interest to draw students' attention to specific areas in this panoramic scene. So there's a description here. There's more points of interest there, and if I click a point of interest, it will take me to it. See it. What's also nice is that there is scene narration on these as well. So this one, I can't remember if it has it. Don't believe I added scene narration to all of this. But you can listen to these places as well. So if there's a typed out description, you can hear it. All right, so that is a sample tour. Ah, there it is.
The two peaks that support Machu Picchu rise from the Urubamba River. This river originates
So you can listen to the information too. You can even add in background music and noises. So after I showed you that, if you scroll further down the page, there are sample tours there as well. So teachers have been going crazy and making lots of different tours and things here. So there are lots that you can borrow from. Even student sample ones too, if you want to show students what other kids their own age have made. So to get started with Tour Creator, You can go to Tour Creator. And it does take a second to load, and you'll just do get started to begin creating one. And I'm going to show you how you can build one from scratch first instead of building from a template so you get a real feel for that. So to build, just so you know, this all saves automatically in Google Drive. The only thing with Tour Creator is that it is purely individual. Students won't be able to share and work with each other on this. It's their own project. So if I want to pull from a template, there are templates here. If I click this one, then I automatically get my own copy made where I can edit and make changes if I need to. And there are lots of them. There are science examples. There are college ones that are for students who are interested in going to school. They can walk through and see that. There are space, dinosaurs, fossils, history, government, lots of different opportunities and options there. But if I want to build from scratch, I go to New Tour. I have to give it a title. I have to add a picture. And it has to be one from your device. There is not a Google image search on this one yet, but I do think that'll probably change in the near future. I'm just going to pick a random picture here, which is Columbus. I guess that is my summer travel. I'm not going anywhere. All right. Add description. You have to put a category on it. And then whenever I'm finished there, I click create. What it automatically does is it pulls up a map of Street View locations. It automatically puts you at Google Earth headquarters. So you can change that if you want. But what I always do is I type the name of the location where I want to get panoramic pictures from first, so I have a ballpark idea and see what comes up. So, all right. So I search, and it takes me here. I'm thinking that doesn't look like the most pretty picture. So it will automatically take you to a Google picture. But if the picture isn't very high quality or you don't like the way it looks, keep in mind you have this same map over here that we were using in all the other tools I showed you, where you can play around and look at things. So if I wanted to find a different picture, I take my little yellow peg man here, and I can drag him around to see if there's a better picture than the one I just saw. So if I like this one better, as an example of this location, I like that one, I click bottom, add scene. All right. So what I'll need to do now is to give this scene a name. And that's the way a Google Virtual Tour and Tour Creator works, is there's different panoramic picture scenes. And you can have lots of them. And across the bottom is where you can add different scenes and different pictures. So it can be all different locations around the world. So for this one, a description there. There is a character limit. So if you are wanting to add a lot of text and information there is a limit. But what I've seen people do is they put a Google Doc there, a link to one. And on that Google Doc is where they have all the information that they need, or Google Slideshow. So that's kind of a way around that character limit. If you want to put credits to whoever took this picture, you can. And this is where you can add in some of those other fun things like audio narration. So if I want to add my own scene narration, I do have to have that recorded first. You're like, how do I record something? It has to be in an MP3 file. And on my slide deck here, I did link 2 resources, Vocaroo, an online voice recorder, where you can record your own audio file. You don't have a limit on the amount of time you can record there. And it saves as an MP3 file that you can save on your device or in your Google Drive. And then when you want to add an audio file, you can just upload it, drag and drop it here, and that's how you can add it. So that's how you can add audio. Same thing with music. You want to add in some background ambient noise while you're walking through a place, you can do that too. You just have to have it saved as an MP3 file. Just make sure that, again, you are licensed to reuse that file. There are lots of free audio files out there that you can find and use. Just make sure it's creative license for teachers to use. I want to add a point of interest, which were those little eye dots on that first one I showed you in Machu Picchu. I would click add points of interest, and a little dot comes up, and this is where I can add more information. So I can put it here. The title, I can add additional information there if I need to. I can add a picture if I want to complement this point of interest. I can also add a narration, and I can keep adding points of interest all along this if I want to. That's what my students would see. If they click here, they'll see those different points and their attention will be drawn to that. So if I am finished with this scene, across the bottom here is where I can add another scene. And I would repeat that whole process again. I have my own panoramic pictures. I can upload them here. So if I've been to a place, I want to show students where I've been and present information that way, I can. If I don't, then search the location again. If I don't like the picture that comes up, I can find a different one. Drag and drop, takes me somewhere else. Something more scenic or less scenic, where I can search again. And there we go. And I would just click add scene again at the bottom. Add in my content and media, add my points of interest if I want to, my description. And all right, so repeat that again. You can move it different locations if I want this one to be first. Whenever I am finished, I click the publish button. And this is where I can configure this to where my students can see this if I wanted them to be able to look at my tour. So I would click publish, and then I have options here. So public makes it so that anyone on the web can view your tour. So if your students have been doing some information and adding stuff to this that they don't need to be sharing with other people, then I can click unlisted. And that means that only people with this direct link, after I click publish, can view my tour. So if I copy this tour, that's how they can see it. If I did public, then anyone can find this on the Google Tour Creator page. So I can copy this link, share it with someone, and they have the ability to view it. So if I click View Tour, this gives me the presented view of my tour as if I wasn't the one who made it. All right, so I can edit it from here if I need to. I have additional sharing options if I would like. I can embed it on It's Learning if I need to, or embed it somewhere else. And this is how I can show students this tour and have them walk through and look at everything. So that is how you build in Tour Creator. It's a pretty fun one, right? And there are lots of ways you can use this in class. Teachers have used this to launch a unit, to have students present on different places around the world, or the different biographies and places where people have lived, scavenger hunt, close analysis. I've seen teachers use this in an ELA class. They've put different text descriptions and paragraphs in a scene on this, and they've asked students to do a close read and then answer some questions afterwards. So now would be a good time to pause and tinker around with Tour Creator so you can get some practice in seeing how this tool works. And the last tool I'm going to show you today is Google Arts and Culture. And this one isn't so much of a creation tool, but it can really be used to inspire creativity in your classroom. So Arts and Culture is a collection of artworks, artifacts, and virtual tours. And it's really made possible through Google and Google's partnership with famous museums and institutes and historical societies on a global level. So to get to Google Arts and Culture, I can click here. It works on a cell phone. There's an app for it. The app actually is a little bit more dynamic than even what this website is. And what is amazing about Google Arts and Culture is it's always being updated and changed. There's new partnerships that museums are putting out there, and you can really walk through exhibits and travel to these locations all from the comfort of your classroom and with your computer. So if I am on Arts and Culture, this is the front page here where it's usually updating and adding new things. There are some selfie artworks here. You can take a picture of yourself and it makes you into art. So there's fun games, there's music connections, lots of things here for you just to explore. It's quite the rabbit hole to go down. So if I want to go on virtual tours, I can do that here as well. So there's quite a bit. Just to give you some tips on specific things that could be fun to use in the classroom, there is a collection and a feature on Google Arts and Culture that is through our partnership with Arts and Culture and art museums, and it's called the Art Camera, and it uses gigapixel technology to allow you to zoom in and get up close and personal and experience artwork like you never have before. And it allows you to really kind of see maybe hidden pieces of artwork that aren't obvious with just the naked eye and far away. So I'm going to show you an example here. There is a gallery of sample art camera artwork. And I did not put this collection together. Google Arts and Culture did. I explore, it shows me artwork that I can zoom into. So this would be something fun to have your students do to kind of kick off the importance of paying attention to detail and close analysis. It doesn't just have to be for art teachers. You could use this in any subject area where students are doing that. And I put 2 examples here on my slide deck. So a way you could introduce this to your class is to have students click this piece of artwork and then practice zooming in. And this is what that gigapixel technology does, is you can really zoom in on this piece of artwork. And then over here is how I could navigate to different pieces on this. So you zoom in closer, you see that it's a mixed media project. These are beads. Did not look that way when we were further away. And then there's pictures within this as well. So it's interesting to see how when you focus in on something, it tells a little bit of a different story than when you're far away. And there's another example listed there from Diego Rivera. So the art camera can be something fun to bring into your class to have students look at details. Other ideas here is virtual tours. So there are lots of virtual tours that are already built in to Google Arts and Culture. So if that's something that you really want to bring into your class, but you're maybe not quite ready to dive into Google Tour Creator, this is a place where you can get those tours already made for you and kind of start off there if you're just beginning with that. So if you click on virtual tours here on my slide deck, it will take you to that. Otherwise, if you are already in Google Arts and Culture on just that main page, the Explore button is what you would click. Art Camera is where I just was, but there are 360 videos there. We'll take you on tours. And there's Street View. So if you click Street View, that brings up the ability to tour famous sites and landmarks. And there's lots of them. There's new ones that are being added all the time. These are some of the most popular and favorite ones. So there's actually endless opportunity there. So here's an example that I put here for you. And what's great about the ones that Google Arts and Culture makes for you is it gives you a description here, tells you about the person, it brings in pieces of artifacts and artwork from the museum where this virtual tour is. So I can tour through those. And then here is where I can actually walk around and view that museum myself. Wherever I see this little yellow guy, that's where it's a virtual tour because it's Street View. So this is how you can do a virtual tour with your students. I can have them walk around and check out and look at the different pieces in here. And click, it walks me to somewhere else. And there are all kinds of them there. So that's kind of a way to get started. Now, how does this look in a lesson? Are you just going to have your students go and dive in and do that? There probably should be a little bit more organization and active activities you have your students do as they go through and look at these. So they're paying attention to detail and so that they're guided as they learn how to use this tool, especially if it's for the first time. So here are 2 examples of how teachers combined a Google Doc activity and Google Arts and Culture for a virtual trip and experience for their students. So here's an example of how you can kind of scaffold this into a lesson activity for your students. So they're actively going through this and paying attention to detail and really getting a full experience of this virtual tour. So what this teacher did is linked to the virtual tour here that was on Arts and Culture and that virtual tour tab, wrote out some instructions, and then what the students are doing here is within Google Arts and Culture, you can favorite items, artifacts, paintings, virtually anything on there, and it creates a little favorites board of those different things that you've liked. So it's kind of like a Pinterest where you can like things and rearrange them into different boards. So that's what this teacher had students do, was favorite different items. And then what they did later on was explain the importance of those items so that students were doing a little bit more than just experiencing the place. They were reflecting on it and explaining why things stood out to them. So what those students would do is if they saw an artifact or an item that they liked in the museum, show you an example. This little heart button is what they would favorite, and then they could view it in their profile. So I favorite it, click view, and then it shows me galleries that I have liked and my favorites. So I can reference them all there and show my teacher later on. So that's an example of doing that. Kind of a cool way to kind of guide students through this as they go on a virtual tour. And some of these virtual tours have videos built in, interviews with the people who are museum curators and docents of the museum. So it's pretty interesting in what you can do. Other teachers have made it as a scavenger hunt where students go through and they look for specific artifacts and things in a museum as well. So it's kind of a way to kind of take your students to different places without having to worry about planning the whole field trip. It's a little bit more accessible and inclusive because of that. So here's some examples of how you can use these. Beginning of a lesson activity, maybe you put a piece of artwork up there and they explore it with the art camera. Scavenger hunt is they go through a museum, they look for specific artifacts and then tell a story with those artifacts. Research projects, museum curators, students could be the ones and they curate different pieces and artifacts from museums and use that to tell a story. So at this point, that is all I have tool-wise for you. By all, I mean I just showed you quite a bit. So if you need to pause and reflect and go back through these, now is the time to do that. I'm not going to leave the pause time here on the video. You have the controls at your disposal. So practice building. Let me know if you have questions. My email is there. A lot of the ideas and resources that I just shared in this session can also be found on Fresh BCSC Tech, the EdTech blog and tech tools that we run in the districts.